And welcome back. You're watching HLN's continuing coverage of the Michael Jackson death trial. Behind me, the seal for the great state of California. That means we are in the morning break, Los Angeles time, afternoon break in the East Coast. Gives us a chance to reset the dial. And been a little bit combative there as you watch Ed Chernoff try and take apart coroner investigator Elisa Fleek. You know, you made a substantial number of mistakes. Are you as sure about that as you are about a propofol bottle in an IV bag? Interesting stuff. We have with us Natisha Lance, a producer from The Nancy Grace Show, joining us from Los Angeles, and also criminal defense attorney Keith Sullivan, and attorney Michael Barnes, also a drug policy advisor. So we got this covered for you every angle. Natisha, I'll start with you in Los Angeles. Chernoff going to work there a little bit, getting after Elisa Fleek.
There is some tough questioning going on here, Mike, but this has to be expected. This is what the defense has to do. They have to poke holes in this case. They have to show if there was any type of incompetency that happened. They have to be able to show that to jurors. They have to be able to show, was this scene kept and preserved after Conrad Murray left the scene, or were some other things going on there? Were there other people who may have possibly been involved? Was law enforcement doing everything that they possibly could to make sure that this scene was preserved? And did they collect all of the items in an appropriate manner? So this is exactly what Ed Chernoff needs to be doing in order to bring this attention to the jurors, to make sure that everything was followed to the letter.
I'd like to see the video from yesterday, guys, and it's the video of all the drugs finally compiled, and these were bottles of propofol. This was yesterday, and there it is. As David Walgren was continuing to question Elisa Fleek, slowly but surely he built this stockpile. At the end of the day, the jury's seeing this. It's right in front of them. It looks like a drugstore, and this is in Michael Jackson's room. So obviously, Ed Chernoff's trying to blunt some of that today. Keith Sullivan, he pretty much has to, doesn't he? I mean, as we see all these bottles that were sitting in front of a jury yesterday, you got to attack Fleek somehow, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we thought this was going to be a very quick examination, but as he has methodically gone through her investigation, going to the location on 2 occasions, he's doing a great job of picking it apart and showing mistakes. But you have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, does it make a difference? The fact that she took photographs after moving medicine, not putting medicine in the photographs, her fingerprints on some of the evidence, very interesting stuff. At the end of the day, does it make a difference? And there's one question that he asked this morning that we will have to address tomorrow with the toxicologist. What color is the fluid that is in the cut IV bag? Propofol is milky white. That fluid is crystal clear. Very interesting.
To that point, I got an email, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, saying, if the bag is not milky, my client is not guilty. To your point there.
I love it. I've been trying to think of that all morning. That's excellent.
There it is. Okay, there it is. And it was effective, Michael Barnes, to show the saline bag with, and Chernoff was trying to make the point, these are clear drops, right? It's not milky substance. I mean, that's huge, right?
Well, I think it's all really early for the jury. They don't have the big picture context. They don't have the argument to go behind all of these facts that are coming out. And I want to make another point to whether or not all of this is the right thing for Ed Chernoff to do. Frankly, if you ask me, Ed Chernoff is a major turnoff when it comes to this jury. He is really combative. He is offensive. He's huffy and puffy. He doesn't know where his iPad is, rustling papers. I think that's going to have an impact because the prosecution is so very well organized and very professional. It's going to be tough for me to sit through another 2 weeks listening to this Chernoff guy.
That's really interesting that you'd say that. But I want to get back to Keith's point here, and that's mine at this point. Okay, does it matter? What's the more powerful bit of evidence? All these, because unless you're telling me Elisa Fleek's planting this stuff, at the end of the day, 12 bottles of propofol and other prescription meds were in Michael Jackson's room and in his closet. Some of the stuff was even laying on the floor, and there's another picture of that. Keith, right? I mean, that's what a jury's going to have to decide.
Absolutely, Michael, and that's what it's going to come down to. But at some level, perhaps the prosecution is over-trying the case here a little bit. We're into week 2, and like Michael just said, we want to get to the evidence. We want to get to the heart of it. I respectfully disagree. I don't think Chernoff is going about this the wrong way. We've been sitting here listening for an hour and a half, I have been waiting for him to cross the line. He's very close to it. He's a little aggressive with her, but he always seems to pull back when he gets there. And I think he recognizes Michael Barnes' point that he could be a turnoff to this jury, and they'll take it out against his client. When you have a client
Forgive me for interrupting.
He's facing manslaughter charges. You got to go.
Right. Let's listen to a little bit of it. And this is where he flat out asks Elisa Fleek, didn't you make a substantial number of mistakes here? Let's listen to that. Check his tone, by the way. Let's watch.
Ms. Fleek, would you agree with me that you made a substantial number of mistakes in your investigation of this case?
No.
You would. Well, would you agree with me that if you don't take notes, you don't keep your notes, that's bad investigation, that's bad investigative work? Would you agree?
No.
Why do you think you take notes, Ms. Fleek?
To write the report?
Well, what about later when you have to testify and you have to refresh your recollection?
You then have your report to read off of.
So your report is complete and thorough.
At that time, yes.
And the report...
So there you go. Is Ed Chernoff being combative and a turnoff to the jury, or is he doing his job and poking holes in Elisa Fleek's testimony? And Letitia, what's your take on that?
I think he's doing his job, Mike. He has to. This is exactly what he has to do. And Elisa Fleek is not answering very well. It sounds like she's even questioning herself. She said he asked her, what is the purpose of writing notes? To write a report? So she doesn't sound very confident in her answers. I don't know if this is going to help or hurt the prosecution, but I think that Ed Chernoff is doing exactly what he needs to be doing at this point with this line of questioning.
Okay, Michael, let's get back to Michael Barnes. Michael, because you were saying, and then you got a chance to listen to it one more time. You're thinking Chernoff is becoming a turnoff, maybe a little too combative. Listening one more time, you still sticking to that?
I disagree with Letitia because I do think it's really early for that, and there's a way that he could ask those questions in a kinder way, in a nicer way, but still get the point across. And any professional in the jury, and there are professionals on the jury, they're going to realize that we all do this. We take notes, we understand our notes, no third party is going to understand our notes, so we create the report and ultimately destroy the notes so that there's never any question as to what we meant, and we don't have stacks of files this big. So this is something that everyone else in the world gets. Why does he not get that this is a standard practice?
Are you seeing, Michael, again, drug policy advisor, are you seeing mistakes? Did she do sloppy work from what you're hearing or not?
I don't think she was doing sloppy work. I think that we are falling into the hands of the prosecution now because we are allowing him to narrow the issue as to where the gloves were, whether they were on the chair or on the floor. And that's not the issue here. The issue is that Conrad Murray created an overarching situation that was very dangerous, and he did not take adequate precautions. He put dangerous substances in the reach of someone who had a history of addiction.
All right, good-spirited discussion is going to continue, and you're not going to miss a moment. When court proceedings continue, we'll take you right back to Los Angeles. More coming up. Keep it right here. And closet. Michael Barnes will get you back in on this, and we could be heading back to court any moment, so if I interrupt, forgive me ahead of time. How powerful was that?
You know, I think that the whole morning is just sort of disconcerting to me when you think about how the defense has treated the witness. But there's an important other piece of information that I wanted to discuss, Mike, which is that there were no medical records that Conrad Murray was supposed to have taken for at least 3 months in 2009.
Right.
But he didn't hand over anything in 2009. So if he's saying that he's treated him for that entire 6-month period, there are no medical records to show for any of the controlled substances and other powerful medications that he was giving his patient.
Those were the critical months, April, May, and June. Jury's coming back in. Letitia, real quick, because we also get that Murray knows Michael Jackson and is treating him somewhat and prescribing him things back in 06, right?
Right. Well, here's the thing that stood out to me about all that medication that was laid out, Mike. There were other doctors who were prescribing that medication for Michael Jackson. We saw Dr. Metzger. We also saw Dr. Klein. So that lends to the prosecution's point that Dr. Conrad Murray knew that there were other doctors who were prescribing medication to Michael Jackson, where the defense is saying he had no idea what else Michael Jackson was doing. He only knew that what he was doing to Michael Jackson. But if those other medications were in the room, in the same room that Dr. Conrad Murray was treating him, then how could he not have known?
Hey, Keith, real quick, there was a juice bottle that really wasn't tested. Oh, well, listen for that. We'll get everybody weighing in when we get a break. Let's go back to notice there. It's always good for the defense when they can mention other doctors that gave Michael Jackson care. And there was a list there, and especially, you didn't get a chance to hear it, but right before we came out of that break, she mentioned Dr. Klein, Arnie Klein. And at that point, Ed Chernoff's like, who is that? Can you, expound on Dr. Klein again? Because early in the trial, if we remember, anytime he could, he would mention Dr. Klein and the Demerol shots at Michael. Was Michael Jackson addicted to Demerol? That's the Demerol defense that was thrown out there early. And anytime I think they can plant that seed, they're going to try and do that. Michael Barnes, you agree with that, is in the sense that the defense wants to, anytime they can, shoot the other doctors' names out there?
Yes, you're right, Mike. I counted 8 doctors plus UCA Medical Center plus a nurse. So this is really tough information coming out from the prosecution standpoint. I would want to know what's in those medical records, hoping that they have more thorough records than Conrad Murray. And if you can show that they kept accurate records and they didn't prescribe Demerol or other powerful medications, then the prosecution could be okay.
Welcome back. There is Conrad Murray. Sidebar with the attorneys, by the way. Conrad Murray again facing involuntary manslaughter charge in the death of the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Could be facing 4 years in prison if he is convicted. Let's bring in our attorneys as the attorneys in court continue to haggle. Keith Sullivan with us along with Michael Barnes. Michael, I'll start with you. And it does seem like a mistake. Shouldn't Elisa Fleek, the investigator for the coroner's office, have photographed the propofol bottle inside the bag and then after that taken him out and done another photo?
Well, by the way Elisa Fleek is describing the situation she was in, it wouldn't necessarily have made sense. She was taking things out of the bag, and they were all jumbled in together. I mean, do you take a picture of the entire bag and then pull out one piece at a time? I mean, the way she's describing it, I also think she didn't realize at the time that the case was going to boil down to this particular issue.
Right.
How the medication got into the body of Michael Jackson.
Right. But would it be better for the prosecution at this point if there was a picture of that bottle in the bag, right?
Yes, and that's why the prosecution said, well, you took the picture of it on top of the bag to show that they came together as a pair.
Yeah.
And she affirmed that.
Okay, let's head back to court, guys. Two attorneys, David Walgren, Ed Chernoff, gives us a chance to talk to our attorney, Michael Barnes. He's also a drug policy advisor. So at the bitter end, Michael, we got it. The prosecution saying you testified under oath that bottle was in that bag. Chernoff is saying you didn't take a picture, or you could have if it was there. And it's up to the jury to decide whether or not that bottle was in that bag, right?
It is, but I do think that there's a danger in focusing the issue this narrowly, and the prosecution was probably right just to let it go and not to go back and redirect once again, because the greater issue for the prosecution has to be that the introduction of these medications into this situation and the failure just to monitor the situation with these medications present was in and of itself adequate negligence, criminal negligence,
right,
to cause involuntary manslaughter.
Well, let's go back to yesterday then, and we've talked about it, we've shown everybody the video of all of those drugs laid out before the jury, all the drugs that Elisa Fleek recovered from Michael Jackson's room, his closet, even a bottle of propofol on the floor. Your contention is that's going to stick with the jury, and that's irresponsibility from Conrad Murray.
Yes, but there is more information that has to come out, and I would guess that the defense is going to bring it out when it has a chance to make its case. And that's, we've got 8 other doctors that somehow have submitted medical records. We need to know what's in them to know whether they prescribed other powerful medications. And then there's also 3 other pharmacies. So this would indicate potentially, from someone with my perspective in drug policy, there might be a case of doctor shopping and pharmacy hopping, which is trying to get these medications from multiple sources. And that could be a sign of some sort of tricky behavior or addiction or other sorts of facts that could be used for the benefit.
Let's take a break. We're going to get